story that's been told countless times. Classic bustling American downtown. Plenty to do, plenty to see. A true community. Then, as the wealthy flee downtown for new suburbs enabled by their shiny new cars, big roads, and new amenities, the city loses its magic. Buildings bulldozed to make way for parking lots, highways, and whatever else in a misguided attempt to revitalize what is now a shell of its former self. What was once great is now this. Newport News is not some special case. There's a famous book that tells the story of how the New York City once faced the very same problem. Not every city was as lucky as New York, though. Right here, a great city was taken from us. But there's one thing that's abundantly clear now. Downtown is ready to be revitalized and has been for decades. The city council knows, the mayor knows, and the people who live downtown definitely know. Maybe you're from Hydenwood, Denby, or Oyster Point and see downtown as a place to commute to or a place to avoid entirely. Maybe you're from a city across the country with a downtown that looks like this one. Maybe you have no idea what a Newport News is. I'm here to tell you why the time to bring back downtown is now. And I guess there's just one thing left to say. We gotta go downtown! Before I get into why the future of this city lies in its downtown, we need to talk about what got us here in the first place. If you really want to dive into the history, take a look at David Lamole's excellent master thesis on the subject. But if you don't feel like reading 76 pages, here are the Cliff's Notes. Picture this. It's the 1950s, World War II is over, and the economy and population are growing like crazy. The city of Newport News is booming, if overcrowded, and neighboring Warwick County is comparatively sleepy, rural, and kinda dead. Both jurisdictions see the advantage of teaming up. Newport News can expand and build more housing for overcrowding, while Warwick County can reap the benefits of the city's strong downtown economy. The first attempt to merge, though, didn't go as planned. Warwick County was predominantly white, while Newport News was predominantly black, and the county voted against a merger, citing fears of an invasion. Newport News wasn't guilt-free either, though. A big motivation behind the push for consolidation was to combat the rising prosperity of the black population downtown, making sure they didn't have a significant voice in politics. Come 1957, both the city and the county voted to unify. Many saw the good in the deal, mainly because of all that shipyard revenue from downtown would spread the wealth across the whole area, making it better for everyone. Many also saw the bad. This move would just further incentivize the wealthy white population downtown to move out into the new development in the former county, leaving only those without the means or legal ability to move north behind. Blocks of decaying row houses were cleared to make way for public housing projects, parking lots, new highways, or just nothing at all. North of downtown was prosperous, with endless new development for the wealthy to enjoy, single-family homes, shopping malls, newer segregated public schools, and even the problematic relocation of Christopher Newport University from downtown to the center of the city. Sure, legal segregation did eventually end in the city and across the country, but it left a big scar between the old border of Newport News and Warwick County. Today, what was Warwick County is still much better off than downtown. That much hasn't changed. However, the city on the whole isn't what it used to be. The Daily Press reports that population growth in Newport News, no matter where in the city, has largely stalled. And that's a similar story in Hampton, Norfolk, and even Virginia Beach. Instead of going into the more suburban parts of each city, people are moving even farther away into Suffolk, Isle of Wight, New Kent, pretty much anywhere that has the land to repeat the cycle over and over again, just without the codified segregation this time. And once those places fill up, what? Are we just going to have non-stop suburbs from Richmond to Norfolk? Here's what sticks out to me the most, though. Demographer Hamilton Lombard from the University of Virginia said that places like Newport News, Hampton, Portsmouth are pretty close to built out, when they have to knock something down quite often to build more housing. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? I just want to be really sure that you're sure about that. I think we might be talking about a different Newport News here. Because what I see is a blank slate to build something fantastic. Blocks upon blocks of downtown are taken up by what? Parking lots, parking garages, and I don't know, grass? All this? If you want to build something new, you're not evicting anyone. Is that not a great place to start over? Well, I can't completely discount what Labart is saying here. These empty spaces certainly aren't all of downtown, and evicting people from their homes to redevelop is a tough situation for everyone, especially considering what redevelopment meant to this community in the past. Definitely, if you go north, the landscape is much more filled out, and it'd be much more problematic in the beginning to go tearing up homes. That's why these sites downtown are a fantastic starting point for building this place back up again. I suppose the question now is, what kind of development should we put here instead? How about some more of this? About 72% of all homes in Newport News are single family, meaning that they're all separate buildings meant to house one single family per building. With how much there is in the city, and really how much there is across the entire United States, why not just go with the flow and put up some new ones in those lots downtown? Well, I have 3 reasons for you why we should try something new with this opportunity. First, there's what the nonprofit Strong Towns calls the Growth Ponzi Scheme. This kind of development is, in itself, unsustainable. I'm not even talking about environmental sustainability yet, which it most definitely is not. I mean the kind of infrastructure required to maintain a sea of single-family homes is just way too expensive for cities to pay for. Think of this kind of development as a McDonald's crispy chicken kale salad. About a decade ago, McDonald's introduced a line of healthier fast food items to address slowing sales and the general perception that their food was very bad for you, which it obviously was. Kale is healthy, there's no denying that, but once you added on the crispy chicken and the Asiago Caesar dressing, the salad actually had more calories, fat, and salt than a double Big Mac. So, why don't you just get the double Big Mac? In a vacuum, these houses are like the kale. There's nothing inherently wrong with a single family home, but once you hook it up to a web of big roads, huge citywide water and sewer systems, and all the other kinds of infrastructure that you need for a full-on city, that's when you add the crispy chicken and the dressing. You have way fewer people to work with to help pay for all this infrastructure. You just can't fit as many single-family homes, and thus there are physically fewer people who can help pay for that infrastructure in the same amount of space that you'd have duplexes, townhomes, condos, apartments, or any other kind of denser housing. Now that's when it becomes a growth Ponzi scheme, because the only real way for these cities to pay off all this infrastructure is to finance it with new single-family homes and large sums of money from their private developers. But what happens when you run out of space and you can't hide the costs anymore? That's when the whole system folds, and you see disrepair at best, and entire cities declaring bankruptcy at the worst. And even though I touched on it already in my past videos, any kind of place built for people who own a car is just inherently worse for the environment. More people drive, kicking out way more carbon emissions in the atmosphere than a place where it's built for walking, public transportation, cycling, all that good stuff. This is made even worse in a country where transportation is the single biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions. Trying to shoehorn in what works in a rural setting into an urban context just isn't panning out for our cities. So, ask yourself this: why not just have the double Big Mac? Why not just build a city like it should be built, or live all the way out in the country on a big piece of land? It turns out loads of people are asking this question too, which leads me to the supply and demand of housing. Let's talk about the 10 highest cost of living cities in the United States. You'll notice that all these cities have that denser style of housing that I'm talking about. People clearly like it so much, and there's such a lack of it around the country that people will pay astronomical prices just to live there if they can afford it. And if people can't afford to live right in it, they want to live close by, driving up housing prices even further and sparking new development further out. Conversely, every single one of the 25 lowest cost living cities in the United States don't have a significant amount of dense housing or walkable environments. You also won't see that same kind of demand to live closer to these places either. Combined with how people across the country are still moving farther and farther away into the suburbs because they're looking for something affordable but still remotely close to our cities, you gotta ask, is it because we just aren't building enough of what people want? And unlike the most expensive cities in that list, we do have the space for more of what people want. It's all right here, ready to go. Except it's not really that ready to go. Talk to anyone who works in the shipyard or anywhere else downtown, or even just look at a satellite image, and you'll see that these parking lots are full during business hours. Kind of makes the case for redevelopment tougher, doesn't it? People actually use all this space for their jobs, to provide for themselves and for their families. How are they going to get to work if we replace all that parking with this new, dense housing? Well, I'm very glad you asked. To answer that, I gotta ride the bus. You see, this is the kind of thing that high-quality public transportation was built for. You got a whole bunch of people trying to get to the same destination, and lots of these people live in similar destinations. Like, this is a textbook situation where a transit line would absolutely flourish. And here's the thing, Hampton Roads Transit knows this too. A bit under 2 years ago, they launched the 757 Express, a targeted set of 13 different routes, all designed to make service better in the places transit was already running. 1 high-frequency route, all 3 express routes, and 6 commuter routes all serve downtown Newport News. And it looks like these changes are paying off. On the 112, the high-frequency route serving downtown via Jefferson Avenue, there's been a 62% increase in the amount of riders since August of 2021. All because it runs 15 minutes on weekdays. That's a fantastic start. Now, the routes that run by my apartment didn't get the same treatment, but it'll give us a baseline understanding of what it's like to ride the bus here, minus the better frequency. Still, for when the 106 and 107 routes run together on Warwick Boulevard where I live, you're looking at every 30 minutes. It's not good, but it could certainly be worse. Let's see what it's like. I took a ride on the 106 bus from the Riverside Hospital Transit Center all the way to the downtown Newport News Transit Center. I could have gotten on one stop earlier, but I wanted to skip the layover of a few minutes at Riverside. You can see what the walk there was like. It's outside of the scope of this bus ride, but there's room for improvement. As for Riverside Transit Center itself, first, nice Comic Sans logo. Second, the station itself is somewhat of a mixed bag. There are plenty of sheltered waiting areas, a direct path to the hospital, and a helpful map showing what's around the station, but there's no sidewalk leading into the station, relegating you to walk on the grass. That's not stopping me from getting to the bus stop, but if I had any mobility impairments, that'd be a different story. The shelters themselves were in bad condition, but could use some attention. As in, there's a service update announcement from 5 years ago. Also, I didn't find any bike parking of any kind. Overall, not bad, but it could certainly be better. The bus ride itself, though, was uneventful in the best way. The bus arrived on time, it left on time, and the operator was very kind. The route does what it sets out to do. It goes up and down Warwick Boulevard. But it doesn't do that particularly quickly. It takes longer than driving, like with any regular bus running in mixed traffic, which is definitely exacerbated by rush hour congestion. Probably not luring anyone out of their cars, but it's here for those who need it. Here we are at Newport News Transit Center, and this is a much more built-out facility. There are sawtooth bus bays so the buses can pull in and out easier, a bunch of bus shelters, covered bike parking, interestingly also inside of a bus shelter, a legitimate station building that was closed when I was there, and actual real paths to get to the station. Not much more I could ask for out of a transit center. Not only that, but the location is fantastic. The shipyard is literally right there. There's a path leading right towards it. It's also only 10 blocks away from the southern point of downtown, so it's serving plenty more destinations and people beyond the shipyard. Of course, buses do stop south of here, but many routes terminate here, so it's great that they got the location right. For the ride back, there's nothing new to report. An uneventful ride with a kind operator, although the bus does have to loop back on itself to enter the Riverside Transit Center, which doesn't help with travel times at all. So, was that wholesale a positive experience? Yes? I mean, there are plenty of things that could have made this trip worse, but even under these ideal circumstances, it was really just fine. Now, if we're talking about an overall picture of Hampton Roads Transit's performance and service quality, you'll see the circumstances aren't always this ideal. The most recent data I could find on their website is for the week of March 24th. Averaging across all their bus routes, buses were on time 71% of the time, early 7% of the time, late 17% of the time, and missing 5% of the time. As for a benchmark, recent data is unfortunately hard to come by, but a 2019 report from Swiftly found that across the nation, buses were on time about 66% of the time, late about 22% of the time, and early about 12% of the time. So I guess that's better, but frankly, neither set of statistics are particularly great. The waters get even muddier when you realize that there isn't an industry standard definition of what on time even means. HRT says that on time can be anywhere from 0 to 5 minutes after scheduled departure time. Up north, WMATA, or Metro, says that on time can be up to 7 minutes late. A 5-minute goal isn't bad because it apparently isn't the worst goal in the state, and lines up with a few other agencies that I cross-reference with, like ones in Petersburg, Richmond, and Alexandria. Regardless of all that, most bus routes across Virginia look just like this. Fine on-time performance, serving some important destinations, and you might find a bus shelter at your stop too. There's one key exception to this rule though, one route that stands above the rest in the state, the Pulse in Richmond. It's not perfect, but it's a great example of the kinds of improvements a city can make to its most popular bus routes. This kind of service is called Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT, which according to the Federal Transit Administration is a high-quality bus-based transit system that delivers fast and efficient service that may include dedicated lanes, busways, traffic signal priority, off-board fare collection, elevated platforms, and enhanced stations. While the Pulse doesn't feature all these qualities at every point on the route, you'll always find large, comfortable stops with platform-level boarding, meaning there's no step up or down to get on the bus for those who have trouble with that. They're not functional right now because all the buses in Richmond are free, but there's a bus ticket kiosk at every station. You'll even find screens displaying the arrival time of the next 2 buses. All these baseline station features make riding the bus just that much easier. The way I see it, there are 3 different kinds of BRT all in this one line. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing for actual service quality, but it really works out for demonstration purposes. You have center-running BRT with dedicated bus lanes and priority right-of-way at intersections, side-running BRT without intersection priority but still its own lane, and fake BRT with no dedicated lanes and no intersection priority. In a perfect world, I'd just say turn the new high-frequency route on Jefferson Avenue that I mentioned earlier and the routes on Warwick Boulevard into full-on center-running BRT. It's definitely still the best option. All the finest systems from around the world have the same qualities that you'll find here in Richmond. But I understand that it might not be politically feasible, as many parts of Hampton Roads, and really the entire country for that matter, have voter bases that just don't see the value of investing in transit, no matter how much data or reasoning is presented to them. So first, I'd say aim for the moon and go for what the Pulse looks like around Jackson Ward all the way through Scott's Addition. The center-running lanes and signal priority really help the service run more quickly and reliably, especially during rush hour. If that isn't feasible, then they could go for a version that looks more like the Pulse on the eastern edge of Jackson Ward, where it runs on the side of the road, but still in its own lane. I definitely still advocate for traffic signal priority so that the buses can still go faster than having just a dedicated bus lane and nothing more. The real caveat with this kind of service is that there's more of a chance for other cars to cut into the bus lane when they're making right turns, so it's not quite as good, but still a massive improvement over no bus lanes at all. Personally, I wouldn't go below this standard though. Once you lose bus lanes like in Shockoe Bottom and downtown, all you really have are some fancy bus stops. I certainly wouldn't complain if the bus stops were nicer, but that's not really the whole point of improving service, is it? That's not going to make the buses run any faster or more reliably. Another targeted improvement Newport News could make is one that you won't overtly see on the Pulse. They're called queue jumps. The National Association of City Transportation Officials defines them as short, dedicated transit facilities with either a leading bus interval or active signal priority to allow buses to easily enter traffic flow in a priority position. If there isn't support or budget for bus lanes for the entire stretch of the route, you can skip them in certain locations and build these instead without adding too much travel time. And even if there isn't any budget or support for bus lanes at all, queue jumps are definitely better than nothing and will help move more buses more efficiently and reliably. Besides the obvious reason of wanting to do all this, of providing a better rider experience and ultimately getting more people out of their cars and onto the bus, the true benefit lies in its economic value. Time and time again, high-quality public transportation investments turn out to be great for the economy and community, regardless of whether you personally ride it. The Health Line, a BRT route in Cleveland, Ohio, cost around $200 million to build, and has directly contributed to $9.5 billion in development along the route in the 10 years since its opening. I'm no math expert by any stretch of the imagination, you can ask my math professors, but that's a big number, especially when we're talking about the main point here being sparking true renewal in downtown Newport News, and not the perverse 20th century version of renewal that caused this whole mess in the first place. Imagine if that momentum spread beyond the vacant space and parking lots downtown and went all the way to the unoccupied strip malls north of here. Improved service could seriously create a new wave of economic development and quality of life in the city, especially in a place where it's very unlikely they'd want to build a light rail line or full-on subway here instead. It's great news that sticking with the bus and making it the best it can be will absolutely pay dividends, even if they're still modest gains compared to a light rail or subway. At this point, how could you not want it? So, we went over the history of how we got here. We went over what we could do to downtown to make it better. But now what? This is the tough part. We gotta show up. We gotta get involved in local politics. I know, local politics don't seem nearly as interesting as voting for something like the president. Showing up to city council meetings, getting in touch with local decision makers, and being on a board or commission takes some serious work, and it's certainly not glamorous. Almost no one actually does it, including yours truly. I mean, I definitely haven't voted in every single local election, so I get it. But by that logic, if people don't show up to local politics, and you're one of the few that actually do show up, your voice is going to be heard, and it'll be heard loudly. Especially if there's an advocacy group in your town or city fighting for the same thing that you are. It takes a certain kind of person to go beyond learning about what can make your city better and actually becoming a part of the change. You have to love your city and show that love to the people making decisions for it. If that doesn't sound like you, I get it. The only city council meetings I've been to are ones on Zoom, and I'm just starting to get involved in advocacy groups. And frankly, many city councils or other local governments could stand to make it way easier to get their citizens involved in the decision-making process. But I'm here to tell you that if you made it this far in the video, you probably have what it takes to make a change. We're in this together. I'm new to it too, after all. I'm not a professional, and I didn't learn any of the stuff today that I talked about in college. I have a business degree, not a planning degree. I learned about all this online just because I was interested. You might not know that you're capable of making a change where you are. But if you really care, show your city that you care. We can be the change. Thank you for watching Living CNU.